Welcome to our episode of the Tower 26B Racer Podcast. I'm Joe Macy. Here once again, Coach Jerry Rodriguez. Coach, how are you doing today?
This was not one of your better ones.
I got to get through it fast. We got Dr. G on. I don't have time to waste on this. There's no time to waste.
You just got to get all right.
I'm wasting time right now dealing with me screwing up the intro because I'm in such a rush to get to Dr. G. But we got another new member on who I don't know if this guy's even been on the podcast yet. It's one of our Tower 26 coaches, Jason Smith. Jason, it is an honor to have you in our virtual studio.
Thank you. This is all Dr. G, though. Let's focus on the prize here.
Just really quick background on you. You former professional triathlete. You've been a lifelong endurance sport coach. You ran at University of Indiana. What else behind you? You're a cutter at the University of Indiana in Little Indy 500.
Adventure racer, long distance swimmer, whatever.
Basketball. Oh, come on. High school quarterback at one for a period of time, right?
Well, obviously, look at the guy. He'd make a good third string quarterback in the NFL. He'd just stand on the sidelines with the towel hanging out of his shorts and just, hair flowing.
Hey, there's some third string quarterbacks doing pretty well right now in Northern California, huh?
They're making a lot more money than me.
Hey, well, enough of you two. Let's talk to Dr. G. Dr. Genadijus Sokolovas. I bet you most people don't even know your last name, Dr. G. Is that right? Dr. Genadijus Sokolovas.
That's perfect, Jim.
Not
too many people can pronounce that.
Like, I'm from Lithuania myself. Poland is not far from Lithuania, so we're kind of like brothers. How you doing, Dr. G? It's great. It's an honor to have you on the show. I remember I met you, Jerry, what was it, 2009 when he came to TriFit for that power testing?
Right. He brought that Swimmetrics machine, or whatever the appropriate name is today. But
so yeah. Dr. G is you're an exercise physiologist. You serve as the high performance director for USA Pentathlon, as a senior physiologist for global sport technology, and previously worked at USA Swimming as their head of sports science and physiology for over a decade. I mean, your whole life revolves around sport, endurance sport, testing, power metrics. You name it, you've done it in the realm of sports. So it's an honor to have you on. And where are you at right now?
I'm in Colorado Springs, actually near Olympic Training Center. My office is not too far from here, about 5 minutes away only. So, and glad to be here for the last 23 years when I moved to the United States.
And you moved from Lithuania. And I have a bone to pick with Lithuania, by the way, Jer, because Lithuania on our list of countries of listeners, 73. I think this might be the lowest on the list besides Trinidad that we've had a guest on of representative listeners. So Trinidad is dead last, which is where our very own Jerry Rodriguez is from. Number 73 is Lithuania. So we're hoping to get a few more downloads for the show from Lithuania now that you're on here, Dr. G.
Yeah, I'm sure more people will be looking that online once you'll announce that person is from Lithuania. But I'm working with Lithuanians on a regular basis, including their top swimmers, Olympic champions, and many others.
Exciting. So, Jared, do you want to talk a little bit about your history with Dr. G?
Well, we met, I was going to say maybe around 2008-ish, 9-ish, when Steve Minatonis, it's like Steve's been the center of focus lately in a number of things that we had him on here for Katsu, and we spoke to him related to the Naiad movie that's coming out. But Steve and I are, have a long history, known each other for, must be close to 35 years now. And Steve was telling me about Genadijus and what he was doing in Colorado Springs and this great machine that he was inventing to test power in swimming. So he brought that machine by, and we did some tests at that club we were all swimming at, Jim. And then Genadijus, after that, I think you took that machine to USC, and I remember coming out there with Dave Salo and yourself and a number of other coaches to review the work that you were doing. So that was the beginning years, and I've always been a big fan of him, so stayed in touch and, like his work, love his work, not like.
So that power, the power, I forget what it was. It was like a string attached to our waist or something, wasn't it? Is that what we were doing? We were pulling a string and it was measuring how much power we were generating per stroke.
Yes, that's correct. We can measure, we call it now a swim power device. But because it's you can measure velocity and force in real time over the video, and as a result, you can see what you're losing speed, what you're gaining the speed, what your mistakes are, and over the many years that we're using this technology, we learned a lot about swimming technique. In fact, we now changed already Learn to Swim program because we see a lot of mistakes coming from Learn to Swim program.
This guy's done. I don't even know where to start here, Jared. Where do we start with Dr. G as to where we want to go with this conversation? I'm just kind of like, my head's exploding because he's done so much on the technique front. He's done so much on the training philosophy front, where we want to pick his brain as to his methodology and where he would want his Lithuanian swimmers to go and his American pentathletes to go. But where do you want to start with? What direction should we move in with him first before we move to something else? Well,
I think interestingly, so globally, an exercise physiologist knows just that, the physiology of human performance, right? I mean, if I could distill that down to a phrase. And then with a lot of expertise, a dozen years or so in swimming, a lot of his work has been done on athletes that are racing 4-minute races and shorter. Yes, there are 1 or 2 longer races, but the majority of swimming, 95% of races are 4 minutes and shorter. And then spending a number of years after that at USA Triathlon, I believe, right, Genadijus?
Yeah, I didn't work, was not employed by USA Triathlon, but we did a lot of conferences, coaches conferences, testing as well, still continue testing triathletes.
Right. And so now we get into the real endurance side of the physiology. So that's where that experience comes in. So I say we just dive right into the topic that's not concern, but a topic that I think needs clarification on. So why don't you take that away, Jim? Just open it up, hit the ball, send him the ball right over the center plate.
There's so much noise right now about zone 2 training. All your training has to be zone 2. Everything has to be at this kind of like lower end, moderate effort. And that's where we should settle in at easy way to say it. A majority of our work should be at that zone 2. I think you're a big believer in this zone 2 type of work.
Well, and I want to pan back for a moment to just sort of create a little bit of foundation. Zone 2 probably needs clarification, and I'd be interested in where Genadijus wants to start with this, and actually what is zone 2 and how one defines it. And then we can sort of start peeling the onion further, because I just did, Genadijus, a simple Google search on zone 2. And I could tell you 10 different things of what Google says that zone 2 is. And probably the most common one is Polar, that says zone 2 is 60-70% of maximum heart rate. And zone 3 is 70 to 80%. Zone 4 is 80 to 90%. Zone 5 is 90 to 100%. So given that that's one example of 10, why don't you give us some foundation to start with, and then we could peel away from there.
Okay, let's start with basic physiology, okay, on energy metabolism in the muscles. So where energy comes from? Energy comes from ATP molecules, okay? And we're breaking down ATP molecules, then we need to recycle them. And there are several pathways in the muscles that can be recycled. In fact, there are 3 pathways. First is when you're racing, I mean, you're racing, swimming or running, doing like a really short work, like a 10-15 seconds, all out. So what is energy coming? You don't need to breathe. Can be a non-breathing. It's non-oxidative way to deliver energy, but you can do really quick this high intensity set, 10-15 seconds, rest maybe 2 minutes or so, 1 minute. It recovers again. You can repeat almost the same time. Okay, recovery very quickly. And the energy coming, which helps to recycle ATP molecules, coming from creatine phosphate in the muscles. Okay. Obviously, this energy system is not useful for triathletes who are open water, long distance swimming. Okay, so next an energy system, next pathway is anaerobic pathway. Anaerobic pathway is also called non-oxidative because energy recycling for ATP molecules comes from so-called anaerobic glycolysis. And this glycolysis has byproducts, which everyone familiar with, such as lactate. Okay, as well as inorganic phosphate, hydrogen ions, and many others. Okay, but lactate is the most studied metabolite, so that's why we can we know about that a lot of articles. Sometimes people are writing about lactate without any understanding what it is. But this testing of lactate helps us to understand how much we are in anaerobic metabolism, how our body reacts to the exercise at different intensities. And the third pathway, this is the last pathway. We have only 3 pathways. The third one is aerobic metabolism, which is oxidative way of ATP recycled molecules or energy recycling. So this pathway is pretty long. You can exercise as long as you have enough endurance. It's below anaerobic threshold. You're not accumulating a lot of lactate, relatively small amount, and so this pathway probably is directly related to zone 2 that you've been talking, Jerry. So there are only 3 pathways in muscles. We designing energy zones a lot. Like you, Jerry, just Googled and saw 5 energy zones from Polar. Okay, in swimming, elite level competitive swimming, we're using 7 energy zones, starting from recovery to SP3. So that's why everyone designs differently. In Europe, it's popular 4 or 5 energy zones. Some countries using 10 energy zones, but in the body, actually, we have only 3. There are no more. But they're overlapped. It's not like you're using just one energy zone, completely aerobic. It's probably possible if you're just jogging, but if you're doing a little bit faster, you're slightly building lactate, but still very low.
So hence, Jason, we can see why there's confusion now, because just that statement in itself, we've got the US methodology. Generally, we have the swimming methodology, we've got the European methodology, and so on. And we have anywhere from 3 to 10 different ways to describe perhaps training protocols, if we wanted to call them different zones. So how do you define, or Jim, let me ask the question to you. How do you define zone 2? Or how do you think our audience defines zone 2? And let's define our audience as some of the folks that we're coaching and are listening to us, and the ones who are interpreting what zone 2 is.
Yeah, I think it's that's exactly what Dr. G said, because I'm familiar with the 3 systems he was just talking about. It's where you can just keep an effort going for however amount of time that you're adapted to without getting into the glycolic system, like he was saying, into that anaerobic burn is what he called it. But it's an effort that's not moving into that I'm changing from burning fat into burning carbohydrates. It's just something that you can maintain for an extremely long period of time without burning out your whole glycolic engine. So an Ironman effort, you go and run a marathon. For many of us, go run a marathon. It's something you can maintain for 26.2 miles. It's something that's not going to burn you out because you're not going too hard. It's something that's extremely maintainable that you can build on and build that volume on.
So Genadijus, can we put a percentage of maximum heart rates into these various zones?
Yes, absolutely.
How would you define that?
Absolutely. The easiest way to test lactate and heart rate together, and then you can see exactly what your heart rate matches with what lactate. What is your lactate threshold when you start building lactate? Below that, that's your aerobic, basically, energy system. Okay, zone 2 probably. And
what is that number on a lactate reading?
Yes, it depends on event. Okay, sprinters, I'm talking pure sprinters, like in swimming, 50, 100. So
1 minute and shorter events 1 minute and shorter.
Correct. Their lactate threshold is slightly lower than distance swimmers. So their lactate threshold is about 90, maybe 89, 90%. From maximum heart rate. Distance swimmers have lactate threshold around 92, sometimes even more % from the maximum. That's why, as Polar describes zone 2, 70% heart rate, that's pure aerobic work. There is no lactate basically in the body. It's definitely so-called aerobic threshold, which normally described as 2 millimoles per liter line of lactate. And in general, lactate threshold described like a 4 millimoles per liter, but that's not correct. It depends on individuals. Everyone is different. Some distance swimmers may have only 2 millimoles as lactate threshold because they're not building more than 5. They're pure aerobic athletes.
And there's some athletes that go all the way. I mean, I've read studies of up to high lactates of 23.
Yeah, especially land-based exercises, okay, such as running or cycling. When you're in vertical position, then body basically works harder, and it's you are also harder works because it's harder blood circulation. If you're in horizontal position when you're swimming, heart works easier, physiological systems work easier. That's why lactate maximum and as well as heart rate maximum are lower. Interesting enough, we did a study more than 30 years ago already and published that. So comparing the same athletes running the same distance time-wise and swimming the same distance time-wise. Okay, and we found that the same athletes had about 10-15% lower physiological response in terms of peak lactate and heart rate in horizontal position when they're swimming than in vertical position.
But were those athletes, was that test done in a way where the athlete that has the swimming background, they're not as developed with running efficiency, therefore heart rate can likely be higher just based on not efficient training, and they're not adapted to running as well as they're adapted to swimming? Was that taken into consideration in those tests?
Yes, because we tested Lithuanian national team pentathletes who are pretty good at swimming and running.
Jace, thoughts?
So once you get the heart rate based on the lactate, and you know what their zone 2 is, and you know what their different zones are based on, you know, your model, what is your suggestion? Like, how do you assign work to your athletes? Is it all at zone 2? Do you hit the spectrum of zones in their training? What's your philosophy in how you administer workouts?
There are several factors you need to take into account before deciding how much you need to do in zone 1, zone 2, or mixed energy zone, which is between aerobic and anaerobic, or maybe an anaerobic zone. First factor, obviously, your event. What event you're going to swim? 1500, like a Olympic race in triathlon, or you're going to maybe swim open water, 10K, okay, or some other distances.
So let's create the context for this question. The folks mainly listening to us are triathletes that are doing events that are 1 hour to 15 hours long. 1 hour being an absolute sprint race, 45 minutes maybe for the super short ones, and then an Olympic distance race, 2 to 3 hours long, a half Ironman race, 4 hours to 7 hours, Ironman events, 7.5, 8 hours for the winners, all the way up to 15 hours. That's the audience here. So now we're talking about endurance athletes.
Correct. And that's why for your audience, obviously, you need to focus more on aerobic training and mixed energy zone as well, because you're developing better aerobic conditioning if your ceiling of performance is higher, because you need to push a little bit higher to have more room, maximum speed. If it's ceiling higher, then you don't need to swim always 98-99% maintain from your speed. Okay, so because your speed is higher, you're swimming already 95% or maybe even lower from your speed. So you can maintain longer time, the same speed you can maintain for longer time. So that's one consideration. If your event is this long, obviously aerobic conditioning is very important, but I think you have to do some good quality work as well in the mixed energy zone, and maybe even a little bit anaerobic work, because inserting sprints in long distance sets in practices, as few studies indicate, that number of mitochondria, which is most important unit in the muscle cells, for aerobic metabolism, number of mitochondria increases more. Okay, it's not just aerobic training. Just swimming aerobically, you'll not be as good when you are inserting some sprints in the practice. For example, For example, you're doing sets like in swimming, and the same can be done in running and cycling as well, because it's endurance sports. They are basically methodology of training is no different too much. So for example, in swimming, you're swimming like a long sets, let's say 16-200s today, coaches tell. Okay, you to swim. Okay, you're swimming 16-200s. But what would be better quality of set if you're swimming 16-200s or you're assuming 4 200s and 250s from a dive after 4 200s. Again, 4 200s, 15 from a dive, 250s from a dive, or 150 from a dive. And that's 4 rounds like this. Obviously, quality of work will be way better, 4 200s and 250s from a dive. And that's where you will increase your number of mitochondria more than you just assuming 16 200s, which is very boring, quite frankly.
Well, you know, and that's funny you say that, because I think we're all on the same page. Myself, Jason, Jerry, we're on the same page as you. We need this whole spectrum of hitting all these different zones. The body adapts to the stress it's placed under. You're not adding that stress. You're never going to adapt and get stronger and faster and drop those zones, raise those zones. But there's all this noise, and it's kind of quieted down in the last few months. But about the Norwegian method, are you in the loop as to what the Norwegian method is?
Sort of. I mean, I've heard about that, read few articles, but not scientifically based articles. Only just opinions from different people. So as I understand, they are not specializing in long-term development of athletes. Okay, and specializing only later, which is good. I'm supportive of that of 100%. We had a lot of research already 22, 23 years ago, and in 2001 probably I published the article on top 100 in swimming in the United States. How many of them, let's say at age 10 or 11, 12 or 13, 14 in top 100, how many of them still present in top 100 of 18 or elite level? Very, very few, which means you don't need to specialize. You can have fun, you can have multiple sports to do and other stuff. So in that term, we know that for many, many years already.
That's right. And so when we're talking about, you know, adding this different spectrum of, you know, zones and what to shoot for in the workouts, something that we will talk about, we have our 2 p.m. call every week, and we get this question all the time about, you know, we talk about adaptations and how changing, you know, training the different ranges of zones leads to those adaptations. Is there any type of rate of adaptation that you typically see in athletes? Like, how long does it take to adapt to a certain stress? Is that something that's all individual? What's your take on the rate of adaptation?
Oh, that's the best topic I know. Rate of adaptation. I did my PhD 35 years ago on that.
It's almost like I did my homework on you.
Yeah. Rate of adaptation. So rate of adaptation is correlates a lot. I mean, it has is different from different factors affect rate. For example, age. The younger you are, the faster adaptation. Okay, and it's very significant. That's why if you just copy elite level athletes, triathletes, or somebody else plan and reduce that proportionally, give to 13, 14, 15, 16 years athletes who are younger, it will not work, because the rate of adaptation of younger athletes is much faster than older athletes. Okay. Second factor is your performances. If you're already athlete who are at the elite level, your rate of adaptation very slow. For example, again, comparing with swimming, since I'm working mostly with swimmers, for example, you have swimmer who world record holder. Okay, if he adapts in 1 year and improves his time by half of a second, another world record. It looks a lot. It's great. But what if the same age swimmer who is swimming like, let's say, 30 seconds slower or even more, obviously has much more potential, and the rate of adaptation for athlete who is not at elite will be faster. Okay, so then the rate of adaptation depends on gender as well, especially during puberty, because we know girls are maturing earlier. Their rate of adaptation at the same age is slower than for boys at the same age. Okay, so then rate of adaptation depends also on your event. Sprinters tend to adapt faster to anaerobic training. Distance swimmers adapt faster to aerobic training. Rate of adaptation depends even on time of the year. For example, if you had break after your most important competition, and you are September, you're taking off, you're coming back to the training, you detrained already. Your rate of adaptation will be faster than athletes who are transitioning from, let's say, winter season to the summer season without any break. Your adaptation will be slower at that time. So as you see, there are a lot of different things affecting rate of adaptation, and obviously training as well. Also recovery. Okay, if you're not recovering well and your volumes are too high, intensities are too high, then rate of adaptation will slow down. And so ideally, we should match rate of adaptation with rate of increase of stress on the body or training volumes. Okay, if your adaptation increased this week by 10%, next week you can train 10% more in this energy system. If your aerobic adaptation increased 8%, you increase volumes by 8%, then you will match your condition with training. If your rate of adaptation, let's say anaerobic, increased 5% in 1 week, what should I train next week? Increase your volumes, anaerobic volumes by 5%. If your sprint adaptation increased by 2%, what should I do next week? 2% increase your volumes in sprint.
So how are we knowing what your percentage of adaptation is?
That's a great question. And many coaches don't understand that. And many athletes don't understand that either. Although I'm teaching coaches on that topic in US already last 23 years, but not everyone still knows about that. Although I'm very happy, coaches like Ron Atkins from Sandpipers, Nevada, who put 3 swimmers plus 2 collegiate swimmers have been on US Olympic swimming team. That's an amazing achievement. So he's using this system already for the last 15 plus years. And he's very happy with that. He thought, finally, I understood how to design the training. So rate of adaptation, you cannot measure by time. Okay, let's say I want to test my swimmers' aerobic conditioning. I'm doing 2K swimming timing. Okay, swimmer swims 2000. Okay, improved 10 seconds from last time. What that means? That means I improved just 0.5% from my time. Okay, should I increase my volume by 0.5%? No, because you didn't measure adaptation. You measured time. Adaptation you need to measure by ability to maintain speed in aerobic energy system. How long you can maintain speed aerobic, how long you can maintain speed mixed energy zone or threshold, how long you can maintain speed anaerobic, how long you can maintain sprint speed. That's your adaptation. You're not measuring correctly. That's why you are just hoping that everything will be good. You keeping your fingers crossed and hope that at the end of the season, your athletes will be in the best shape. But if you're not measuring adaptation, you don't know what's going to happen because you don't know what condition they are. And you are giving them training volumes that you designed in the plan without adjusting depending on their rate of adaptation.
So I got a question. What is the best rate to measure this fitness? So I say if I go on a 10-mile run and my heart rate starts drifting out of that zone 2, do you basically mark that right there saying, okay, I'm getting out of zone 2 at the same pace? And so the next week I do another 10-mile run. All of a sudden my heart rate starts drifting later on in the run. Is that what you're talking about?
I don't think you need to look at the heart rate in this case. You need to look speed. Okay. All right. So you running 10K, I don't know, 1K, maybe 330, 320, whatever your speed is, every K. And your goal is to maintain the speed for as long as you can. Obviously, heart rate will go a little bit higher. You probably will start building some lactate even at then because you're trying to keep longer and longer the speed. Okay, but that's okay. Your conditioning will increase better from that. So your goal is to increase as long distance as you can. But I would even suggest to break down that by 1,000 runs. Okay, like in distances, like I said, start running. Let's say 1,000. Okay, with 30 seconds rest. Relatively short. Obviously, runners don't like short rest like in swimming. I like short rest. But you can go 1 minute rest. That's okay if you want, but then lactates will increase more. You definitely will move from zone 2 up. So run 1,000 with 30 seconds rest and see what best average you can have. That's just like a test, all out. Okay. So your best average 320. Perfect. Next week, you run again this set, but you are running at 320 every K. You don't run faster. You don't run slower. Average 320. Okay, you run 322, 318, a little bit compensating, average still to 320. You're still able to run, and you finishing 6. Maybe I can do one more time. Okay, let's go one more. Hoops, you did 7. Perfect. But you're already exhausted. You're tired. You're breathing hard. Obviously, you already moved out of your comfort zone, which is fine. But you improved your conditioning by 15% from last week. That's awesome. Okay. So then
I'm sorry, but I don't understand that. Let's back up. If the test was 6 times 1K,
yes,
and you just decided to do an additional 1K the next week, why have you improved?
Why
why have you improved? You could have done 7 times 1K in the first week, but you chose the set to be 6 times 1K.
Correct. But your goal for the first week test was to do best average. And you did 320 best. You pushed hard. You pushed as hard as you can. 6 1,000. Okay. You can start with 10 1,000 if you really aerobic. You want to be more aerobic set. Okay. So that's why you did 320, 6 1,000. Okay. At 320 pace. So the next time you start to increase. Can you do 7? Can you do 8? Can you do 9? Can you 10? You don't need to go faster. You're building capacity in this energy zone.
Understood.
That's how you're measuring capacity. That's how you're measuring adaptation. Adaptation is not a time. Adaptation is how long you can keep speed in the same energy zone. Swimming, running, cycling, rowing, speed skating, you name it, any sports.
So the first one's just the baseline, and then you build off of that each. So you say that successive weeks you're doing this? Are you doing this every couple of weeks? Like swimming, biking, running, you have your baseline, and then you're having your test of adaptation. Are you doing one workout a week to test that adaptation, or how often are you doing those workouts?
It depends. So how much you want to spend on the test sets. Based on our experience, and I would recommend do at least twice a week, but not necessarily the same test. You can have 2 different tests covering 2 energy systems, aerobic and mixed energy zone, or aerobic and anaerobic, depending what you need. Okay. And and then you are doing 2 test sets instead of just one. One test that it's not enough, in my opinion, because you want to challenge your body more than once a week. This is really challenging set, especially once you will start moving towards 8, 9, 10, 12,000, running the same speed that you did best average. Then you already suddenly increase your adaptation by 100% and more. Okay, we see our athletes increasing their adaptation by 300, 400% during the training season. And so therefore, a number of tests per week, it depends what you want to monitor first, and second, how many times you want to challenge yourself per week. And when we did studies on that with younger athletes, because they're adapting faster, they recover faster, we did basically every practice test set. We call it N times test sets. We don't know how many you can do. You tell us how many you can do. We want to do more, and more, and see what are your limits, how many you can improve during the training season.
So if we look at a majority of our athletes like that are listening right now, they're half Ironman athletes. Could you give an example of a swim test set, a bike test set, and a run test set that would be just one set of each one that would be good for a long distance triathlete?
Yeah, swim set, I would start probably with 4 or 5 200s with short rest interval, 20 to 30 seconds rest. Okay. So, and then you record your best average time, because starting set has to be hard. Okay. You need to push yourself on the best average. And then you record your average time. Let's say you're swimming 2 minutes, 20 seconds every 200. Okay. Next time, let's go 220. Don't start too hard. Don't start too easy. Always like machine, 220, 220, 220. Plus minus 1-2 seconds, that's okay. You are compensating. As long as average is the same, you continue doing the test. And then once average already slips slower, okay, you stop already. But the last repeats, normally coach should be really motivating at. Let's go, one more, let's go. So, and then you see athletes are building capacity. It's like a foundation of the success of your result at the end of the season. You're building foundation.
Bike, what would you do for bike test set?
I'm not as much familiar with bike sets, but it should be similar approach. So bike, what's the distance? How many hours you're on the bike on triathlon? 2 hours at Olympic event, correct?
2 hours for a half, a little over 2 hours for half from the pros, 3 hours for, average athletes, long distance triathletes, anywhere from 4 hours to 7 hours, 8 hours.
The Olympic event specifically is approximately 1 hour on the bike.
1 hour.
On the bike, yeah. But we are not talking about Olympic event over here. Yeah, probably. Yeah. So probably it's again, it should be like a time-wise. I would put somewhere in the mixed energy zone set, which would be maybe 6 repetitions of 3 minutes or so, maybe even more than 3 minutes, 4 minutes. 6 repetitions, that would be more like a mixed energy zone set, which they will be building lactate by the end of the set for sure. And then start increasing distance, number of repetitions. Okay, how many you can go? More. And normally adaptation happens like exponential curve. Okay, accelerating more, higher, building higher, your conditioning improves your machine, and then you're maintaining constant speed even during the competition, because you're learning how to maintain constant speed, the same speed always. And that's
what's the rest? What's the rest in those 6 times 4 minutes on the bike? Same 30 seconds?
Running
No,
and cycling.
biking.
Yeah, I know, but running and cycling physiologically a little bit more demanding events than swimming. As I told, the response physiological is larger. So that's why they keep 30, 40, maybe seconds, 45 seconds, but I would not put long, because long, then you are slipping more in the higher energy category.
And then run, would you say 800s, mile repeats, 1K repeats?
For running?
For running, yeah.
Yeah. For running, 1K probably repeats are pretty good. Yeah. Mile is, you see, you need to start with relatively large number. 6 repeats. Okay, the reason for that is because improving from 6 to 7, that's already a lot. It's like a 15-17% improve. Sometimes it may not happen in 1 week. That's why better shorter distance, higher number of repetitions, and shorter rest. Okay, for example, you can do 800s running with 20 seconds rest on. That would be reduce some intensity because rest interval is very short, and you start with 8 800s. And then start increasing number of repetitions.
Gotcha. Some interesting stuff there. A lot to take into account when formulating some plans.
And then once you know how much you're progressing, then you can design your training season, and you can manage your training based on your rate of adaptation. That's why I consider a rate of adaptation. I don't consider rate of adaptation just a time. It doesn't show anything.
Now, you talked earlier in the very beginning about the sort of the first energy zone, the creatine phosphate, these short, very burst of energy efforts, 10, 15 seconds, and you do not recommend those for endurance training?
Yeah, probably because it doesn't make any sense for athletes to swim, let's say, 12.5, so 20 meters, 10, 15 seconds work, maximum 25 for better swimmers. So it's better for them focus, because they will not help a lot for long-term training adaptation. However, as a sprint, as I told, introduced in the swim sets, that will help. But sprint should be probably shorter, like a 50 at least, not 25. With the swimmers in the pool who are racing much shorter distances, as Jerry mentioned, 95% of distances are shorter than 4 minutes. So we're introducing 25s. That's good for them also to mix with some longer sets.
Gotcha.
By the way, regarding this rates of adaptation, I didn't mention that. As I told you, I'm studying that for 35 plus years already. And we developed already multiple software for training design based on predicted rate of adaptation. You're entering your age, you're entering your performances, results based on several distances. Then software analyzes relative endurance that Jerry knows a little bit about already. We discussed with them. Also analyzes your history of training and many other factors, and designs the optimal training plan based on the studies that we did. So based on your predicted rate of adaptation, what will be your aerobic adaptation, depending on your performances, age, gender, what will be your anaerobic adaptation, what will be your sprint adaptation, all energy zones. You can select whatever energy zones you want, and software designs optimal training plan with taper and other stuff.
How do we find out more about that? Where would someone go to get that information or purchase that product?
They can go on our website. I can share the screen if you want, show it for you as well. So it's really cool stuff. As I told Coach Ron Aitken and more than 3,000 coaches, elite coaches around the world, they're using the software already.
No, tell us, what is the website address?
globsport.org. globsport.org.
B as in boy.
Correct.
Sport.org. Okay, we'll look that up. globsport.org. We can look that up and ride your coattails to success. Now, you're an exercise physiologist, right? By education, right? Doctor
Correct.
in exercise physiology. How important is it to do exercise and strength work outside of swimming, biking, running, in addition to everything you're doing in the discipline of triathlon?
And keep remember the guideline that the athlete that's training for a 4 to 15-hour event also
Correct.
has a job, a family. So let's take into consideration the amount of time that they're able to spend. How do we dissect their time, and should one allocate time, to Jim's question, and if so, how much?
Yeah. So most important in swimming, if you're talking about swimming, so most important is to use muscles. Okay, if you go to the gym and you're just lifting the weights, I don't think you're going to use these muscles in swimming. So that's why you need to be very specific in order for you to use these muscles. To be very specific, you need to do certain exercises on land. You cannot just stay in, based on our research, you cannot just stay on the ground with both legs strongly and do strength exercises, such as, for example, stretch cord. I see a lot of swimmers, triathletes coming to the pool and warming up, stretch cords, pulling on the deck. Okay, is it good? Terrible. Why? Because you are not in the environment as in the pool. You're using your legs to balance yourself on land, and you're trying to strengthen your muscles, but in fact, you're not strengthening your muscles. You're pulling just with your arms and balancing with your legs. That's basically it, what you're doing. How much you can transfer this strength from land to the water? Very minimal, okay? Same if you are lifting heavy weights as well. You go to the gym and lifting weights, very minimal strength. What's the solution? You need to be on unstable platform. You need to stay on one leg and do the same stretching exercises. So what happens when you're staying on one leg? Your body tightens. You're balancing from your center mass, same like in the water. You cannot balance from your legs and your arms in the water. Swimming technique is very inefficient in this case. And that's why you have to stay on unstable beam. Staying on one leg is one of the solutions. Very simple. Or if you want to be more sophisticated, purchase the Bosu ball or some other unstable platform, stay on the Bosu ball and do the strength exercises on land. That's especially good for long distances because you're not going to build big muscles that you will carry on.
Jim, stretch cords on the Bosu ball.
Let me tell you something. Okay, Dr. G, we're big fans of stretch cords here. So I'd rather get my athletes doing some stretch cords without a Bosu ball than no stretch cords at all. But that being said, I understand what you're saying. We were very in that water. We were very unstable, and we need to use that core. And I think it's something that's totally forgotten is we got to keep that core engaged as we're swimming. So what you're saying is do things outside that force yourself to engage that core so it's more natural when you get back into the water.
Correct. Yeah. So that's why use your stretch cords as you're using right now. Just ask your athletes to stay on one leg. That's very simple. And body is going to be engaged without even thinking. They don't need to think even about that.
Jerry, you need to do a new
Jim. I love this.
Our most watched YouTube video is our stretch cord video, and now you have to redo it with one leg, Jerry.
One leg,
Absolutely.
right leg, left.
I'm
leg,
so good at stretch cords. I do them with no
Bosu ball.
legs. I do them with no legs. That's what I do. That's how good I am. But yeah,
Send me the link. I want to see that. No legs.
Tower 26 Bosu ball. So that's interesting. So always add an element of instability into your strength training.
Absolutely. Especially for longer distance athletes, okay? Because you don't need muscles, as I told, big muscles. It will just slow down you. You'll be not able to deliver oxygen to these muscles. It will be heavier in the water. And that's what I see even with Olympic swimmers. They're coming to Olympic training center, going to the gym and bouncing, I mean, increasing the weights, lifting the weights, heavy Olympic weights. I'm asking them and coaches, why you need to do that? Did you measure your strength? Maybe we need to measure your strength and ability to transfer it in the water. That's what we're doing. We're doing strength testing on land, then strength testing in the water, and we're looking at simple ratio between water and land. And if you are not transferring strength well, which we know how many percent you need to transfer for different events is different. So if you're not transferring, then why are you building the strength? Just to carry muscles around?
But what about pull-ups?
Pull-ups, I like it. I'm doing myself more pull-ups now than 40 years ago. So I feel pretty good about that.
How old are you, Dr. G? What's are you over the
62.
62. How many pull-ups can you do?
23 did past
23 pull. Jim, between you and I and Jason, could we collectively do 23 pull-ups? I could do about 3.
I could do 2/3 of a pull-up. That's about it. So
far we have 3 2/3. Jason?
Yeah, I'm with Jim.
3 2/3.
Amazing. So that's interesting. So add that instability in your strength work, drop your weight, get more unstable, and work those stabilizing muscles. Now, we've been talking a lot about form goggles, EO hand paddles. There's all these new technology coming out into swim to measure efficiency, like we talked about earlier. What's your take on all the new stuff that's coming out, like those form goggles, like the EO paddles, Triton swim device, all those things?
I mean, all the additional information, additional technologies are always good. It gives you some information that you didn't see before. And I like it when technology is coming. But at the same time, you need to be careful by interpreting that. Okay. And so when you're interpreting, let's say EO, okay, these paddles, it's not new idea. What's the name? Dr. Rod Gavrilyuk from Florida, he was using that for already decades, the pressure sensors over here. So EO went a little bit more further. They have not only pressure, but also trajectory of the arm motion, which is good as well. But at the same time, you don't know how much that affects the speed. Okay, are you moving forward because of that, faster or slower? I don't know. So that's why we are going in another direction. We're measuring speed. That's most important. And then we can then tell, okay, in this position, you have more speed. In this position, you have less speed, lower speed. So form goggles, I worked with form goggles a little bit. And in fact, actually, a couple of weeks ago, we discussed over the phone with them that we probably will resume our work and do some studies. And I like form goggles, because especially I want to do one study, not only on the heart rate side, but also on the distance per stroke. Okay, we know that in swimming, distance per stroke is everything. The best swimmers, even sprinters, Caleb Dressel, Florent Manadou, and others, they're doing fewer number of strokes per lap, racing 50, than other swimmers who are not winning the races. Why is that? Because they're so powerful. They're swimming long distance per stroke. And the best swimmers swimming long distance per stroke as well. Although in open water, when there are a lot of waves, you cannot glide, you cannot swim long distance per stroke. That's why you have to increase tempo, but it doesn't mean that you don't need to increase distance per stroke. Distance per stroke is a parameter that you can improve the most. For example, speed depends on your tempo and distance per stroke, correct? So if you have increased tempo, you increase speed, the same distance per stroke. Or you achieve the same tempo, increase distance per stroke, you increase speed. What's easier to improve and where you have more potential? Obviously in distance per stroke. You don't have too much potential in tempo. It's limited. Okay, can you increase 5%, maybe 10%? Probably no more than that if you're already swimming high tempo. Okay, so but distance per stroke.
Let me ask a question here then. Let me just insert, yes. We are 35 years after today, 35 years later, than Janet Evans going 4:03 for a 400-meter freestyle at 1988 Olympic Games. Okay, 4:03, which still place her in the finals of an Olympics today. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, at 60 strokes per length, whereas your Australians and your Americans, Katie and so on, are in the 36 to 42 strokes per length range. So she is 50% higher in cadence rates.
Correct.
How
So,
do we address that comment?
So first, you need to look at the at the relation between tempo and speed. With higher tempo, you're swimming faster, up to a certain level. Okay, I mean, stroke becomes less efficient already. So, and the shorter swimmers, like Janet was, and
she only weighed 90 pounds, 95 pounds, whatever it was.
She's
at that
light.
age,
she's light, you know, and she's short. Her arm span is not like Michael Phelps or some others, you know,
Correct.
and it's hard for her to compete against swimmers and swim the same tempo. She needs to increase tempo. That's why she needs to swim. She needed to swim fast tempo, because tempo, as I told, is directly related to the speed. However, majority of training, I would say 2/3 of the season training, maybe even more than that, you need to spend on working on a distance per stroke. Because with the stronger kick, with a good distance per stroke, efficient stroke, you can improve 30, 40, 50% and more your distance per stroke. So then you can move to the tempo second half of the season, because tempo, as I told, is important for the competition, especially for open water. You cannot glide, you have to swim higher tempo. But when you improve distance per stroke, your stroke becomes more efficient. Then you can go back to the tempo and you'll be still a little bit longer swimming distance per stroke than before.
So you lay the foundation with DPS, and then you sharpen it up with tempo.
So
Absolutely.
this is the golden question. How the hell do you improve distance per stroke? What's the technique, magic bullet to improve my distance per stroke? Jerry stands on the side. Hey, you're at 21 strokes again. What the hell? Bring it down to 17. I say, Jerry, what? How? What do I have to do? Dr. G, help me. How do I bring it down? What do I have to do? What's the special? The special Dr. G formula.
I like you guys.
I see a video. I write an article. I see a video. You're sitting on the side of the world championships, just looking at all these elite swimmers, bringing them over. Hey, do this better, do that better, do this better. So you have the gall to tell the best swimmers in the world how to increase their distance per stroke. Share with the rest of us mere mortals. How can I get my swim stroke down from 21 to 16 per 25?
You cannot increase distance per stroke at the competition. That's already too late. As I told you, the most important work needs to be done during the first 2/3 of the season. Okay, that's where you can increase your distance per stroke. And you need to swim different sets. For example, counting number of strokes, and the goal is to increase speed and still keeping the same number of strokes. Okay, you're doing, let's say, 100 repeats. And you gradually, your goal is increase speed, but you cannot increase distance. You cannot drop, increase number of strokes. You're doing the same number of strokes every lap. And you're doing your best, you're swimming at your best. You become more efficient in the stroke. You're gliding a little bit. You're including stronger kick, which is also great, because kick has a lot of potential, and most of triathletes don't know how to kick. Some of them I see moving backwards when they're on the kickboard. And then the sets would be like one of the sets I described. Okay, next sets, you are trying to always reduce number of strokes per lap. You're doing descending in number of strokes.
Yeah, but Dr. G, how do you do that? What's the key? Come on, give me
a second. Okay. So swimming, in order to increase distance per stroke, you need to move your hand with acceleration towards the end of the stroke. Okay, when you're accelerating, you're catching the still water that stays over there behind. You cannot catch still water on the sides, you will be losing speed. Then you improve your technique as well. Okay, make sure you have a high elbow position, vertical forearm early in the stroke, keeping palm always towards the feet and accelerating always towards the end of the stroke, and glide a little bit with stronger kick. So improving the kick, your distance per stroke improves as well.
See, it's as easy as that, Jason. It's that easy. Accelerate your hand, keep it wide, finish your stroke, and glide a little bit.
Can I talk now? Can I talk? Can I talk now?
Sorry, Jason.
We're waiting. We're waiting.
He's been waiting. He's bubbling over right now.
So real quickly, let's go back, if you don't mind. Let's go back to zone 2. Have you ever prescribed a workout where it's only zone 2? Go out for an hour run zone 2. And if so, why? If not, why as well? So for instance, real quickly, I see a lot of coaches right now, no matter what, they always, well, not always, but a lot of coaches, they always improve, or they always try to put in some type of speed work, no matter if it's 10-second accelerations. Jim, you're gonna put your hands up about this. We always try to focus on trying to get some type of acceleration in, whether incline or whatever, after or within or before a long zone 2 run. So would you do this with your runners as well, or swimmers or bike cyclists, or yes or no, or just flat zone 2?
No, I would probably very rarely give zone 2. I like to give some speed work, but not at the end of the practice. It might be at the end, but also would give in the middle as I thought, include in main sets. You're doing zone 2 set, you go accelerate every time after a while. But I see also sometimes athletes should run only zone 2 or should swim as well. Although I don't like zone 2, it's not zone 2 completely. It's more a recovery aerobic zone, if considered by bipolar 70% of heart rate or so. So basically, you can find the place in a seasonal training when you need some good aerobic long distance, let's say same pace training. Okay, like a 2-hour training, same pace you're running or swimming. That would be beginning of the season, when you're building some aerobic capacity, and it could be also even like a recovery practice when you're doing like a high quality work, and then next day you're just jogging longer distance, hour, 90 minutes, or even more. So that's where I can find it. I can see how to use that, but majority of practices probably not, because it's very boring and you're not improving, you're not challenging yourself.
Gotcha.
Dr. G, you're a man after my own heart. Unbelievable.
Thank you.
I love it.
So another question is, what if you go lower than 70%? Is there any benefit?
Recovery.
Okay.
Yeah, recovery. You are recovering after good quality work. You can jog easily. Okay,
exactly.
That's easy jogging.
So there's a main point of zone 2. That's 70%. There's a lot of good stuff going on. That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it's aerobic. It's aerobic training, and it's way below your anaerobic threshold. Mm-hmm. And do you need that? We can tell very easily if you need that or not in swimming. In triathlon, it's a little bit more difficult, but we can do some studies and look at that. Although I don't have too much time to do studies in triathlon, but we can do that by analyzing relative endurance. Okay, what's your relative endurance in comparison with elite level athletes in your event? Are you maintaining your speed better from shorter distance to longer ones than elite level athletes in your event, or you're not maintaining as well? So, and to analyze relative endurance, like in swimming, we're looking at the ratios between times: 100 by 50, 200 by 100, 400 by 200, 800 by 400, 1500 by 400. Okay, maybe even 3000 by 1500. That's rarely, because it's not swimming even 3000. So when you look at the ratio between times, it shows you relative endurance, your ability to maintain speed from shorter to longer distance. And we have developed an entire database. It's called Talent ID and Development Database, which already close to 4,000 swimmers around the world are using, many countries as well. And this database, one of software in the database is analysis of relative endurance and telling exactly how much you need to train in different energy systems based on your relative endurance. Maybe you need a little bit anaerobic work to do, not only aerobic work. Maybe you need to do a little bit threshold, mixed energy zone as well. If your relative endurance is already super good, you're maintaining speed like so well, you can run forever, but you don't have any acceleration. Most likely you're limited, and your performances will not be improving as much because you need some speed work. Then you need more sets like this, like you described at the end of the practice, like a speed work, running on the hill, or other type of sets. But if your relative endurance is optimal, then you need to train the same number of energy zones, or percentage in energy zones, the same amount of volumes as you're already doing. If your relative endurance is not as good, you're not maintaining speed, you need to back off intensity and do more aerobic work. If your aerobic endurance is too good, as I told you, you're just running forever at the same speed, but you cannot accelerate, you need to increase power, speed.
You need to have all these tools in your toolbox, as we say all the time. And as Jason always says, it depends, right? So Dr. G, really, really good info. My brain's about to explode right now. I think you gave enough for this episode, but I'm sure we're going to have you back on in the near future to discuss. You're going to have a debate with Coach Jack, the swim surgeon. I don't know what you're going to debate yet, but we'll come up with it. If anyone wants to find anything more about you, where's the best place to go?
I don't even know. I'm not looking for my information. No.
Who knows?
But,
just go to USA Pentathlon. You can find more stuff about Dr. G. And
no, probably not enough. Just Google Dr. G, Genadijus Sokolovas, and you find a lot of
there you
different
go.
things.
You'll
Sometimes
find
even surprised about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. So it's been a pleasure having you on, Jerry. Anything else from you?
No, appreciate the time.
Dr. G.
It's about time we did this.
It's about time. It took 109 episodes, but we knew you'd be here eventually. So hey, it's been great. We're going to get into our workout of the episode. You're free to go whenever you want. But Jared, should we get into the workout of the episode?
Yes, please. Why don't you go ahead with that?
Okay.
Since I have not looked at what you put up on the sheet.
All right. See you later, guys. Thank you.
Dr. G.
Thank you
very
Genadijus.
much.
Take care.
And yeah, any questions that come in, we'll get them to you.
Okay, great.
Beautiful. All right. So Jared, after last week, that was some good stuff. After last week, did we with Lionel bringing up the workout of the episode? I think we had a lot of people jump on and check that one out. So go to coaching.tower26.com. And actually we had a question come in about
we did this workout this morning.
Yes, we did. And
Yes.
I just did this workout. It's fresh in my mind. So I said, hey, let's bring it in. So go to coaching.tower26.com. We will open this one up so you can see all the video. You can hear Emily's beautiful audio and you can see the details of the workout. But let's get into it. You'll do a little warm up. And then we want to always work at this time of season. We have one more week left until our technical phase starts. So we're still in our race ready phase. So we're going to work in the skills needed for race day. So Jared, what do we got first here?
Well, to your point, pretty much the 1st of November, we begin the 2024 season, right? That's where we go into all technique and recovery. Doesn't mean there's no training. Remember, there's obviously a training benefit, a massive training benefit, as Dr. G just said, about technique, right? Distance per stroke. So I think it's next Monday, whatever the date that is, Jim, the October 29th, 30th, whatever it may be.
30th. I think it's the 30th.
Yep.
So next week.
So
anybody who's coming on board or thinking about coming on board, it's a perfect time because we get in that technical phase and we kind of start from scratch. So coaching.tower26.com.
So today, after we did our warm up, and we had a good 20-25 minutes of various warming up things, our main set, so this is for level 1 athletes, your more elite athletes, a 400, 300, 200, 100, said differently, approximately 5 minutes of swimming, 4 minutes of swimming, 2.5 minutes of swimming, a minute and 15 seconds of swimming. And what we did was we progressed effort as the duration of time or the duration of distance was decreased. So we started at 70% at the 400, 75% at the 300, 80% at the 200, and then 85% of maximum heart rate at the 100. And we had some rests prescribed for those distances. And then we took that time, Jim, that you did on the last 100, or for some folks, our level 3 or level 4 athletes, they'd be going 75s. We had one gentleman in our workout this morning, he was going 50s, but something that takes approximately a minute and 20 seconds. That time that you did at 85% on that last swim, we gave an extra 30 seconds rest after it. And then we went and did 5 more reps trying to sustain the time that you did. So Jason swam 107, 106, somewhere in that range. And we wanted him to swim 106 for the rest of those 5 100s. So that came right after that. And once we wrapped that up, then we went into recovery pulling. We do lots of pulling at Tower 26. That's where we work on technique, ankle strap, snorkel, buoy, always a snorkel, and worked on good distance per stroke. That's the main focus now. In fact, we have included the Form goggle in our kits, and we have Form coming to visit us in a couple of weeks, I believe, to introduce the product to all of our members. I think it's a product that everybody should have. So we did that for about 10 minutes of pulling, and then we wrapped up the workout with a few little shorter things.
Fun times. That was a good one. Remember, coaching.tower26.com. We're going to call it there. We're going to get to the questions episode on the next one, which we'll have in 2 weeks. Jerry, who's on the next episode of the Tower 26 podcast?
Well, I'm trying, as you know, to get Diana Nyad on. That movie is being released in another week and a half or so, but the writer's strike or the strike's still in place, and we can't. They're not allowed to talk.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure yet.
I'm scabbing right now, being on here, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not an actor, even though you may think one. I am one. Hey, Jason, it's been a pleasure having you on, buddy. Any last words from you?
No, but do we have maybe a minute or two? Because
briefly,
no, that's-
Mason's going to be eating his arm pretty quick, so make it quick.
quickly. Well, I want your take actually. I want to know your takeaway, you and Jerry's takeaway from Dr. G. Like your top number one. This is what I got from it.
Well, I think it's key that you need to work all the tools in the toolbox. You can't just sit at a freight train level effort and expect to have performance on race day. You need to work the full spectrum, make sure you're adapting to the stresses you're putting on the body and getting stronger week over week, month over month, year over year, because you're working all those different energy systems.
I think
Two
from
things.
a listener's standpoint, yeah, this is good for us to listen, and then as a coach's process what he's talking about, and then okay, let's talk about this again real quickly. This is in Cliff Notes. Boom. So Jerry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to create some universal language around zone training, because I think there's too much confusion in the marketplace about it. That's
Jerry's
number one.
been on this goat forever.
Number two, Jim, number two, everyone's buying a Bosa ball.
Bosu ball, put it in the kit with the form goggles.
That's right.
All right, a lot of good
I love
info
it.
here. Remember, guys, go to coaching.tower26.com. You have a question, write Jim@tower26.com. We'll get through the questions next episode. For Jason Smith, Jay Rodriguez, Dr. G, this is Jim Lubinsky, the Tower 26 Be Race Ready podcast.